any question I put down doesn't seem to quite do justice to what I think is important to talk about here. So, first of all, it is important. Like, why has sex become so important to relationships that people feel like on Tinder and things like that, that's how they express themselves, and the key way in which they express themselves a lot nowadays. But the other side is like, it's not, I'm not at all saying sex is a bad thing. That's a weird thing to say, right? Um, uh, it's what I'm also, I think, is really important to understand is why has it become important, and has it become important at the cost of other things? So I think I have my guest joining in. Hey, Salim, good to see you. So we've just got
Hi
started.
everyone.
Hey, so let me just try to, yeah, so we just got started, and you can see hopefully on the screen what we're talking about, Salim. Thank you for joining us, appreciate it. So selfish people collect this. So I always try to give a really short answer to what's going on, or my answer, and it goes something like selfish people collect endlessly, forever unhappy. So that might give the impression that, sex is a bad thing, and that's completely wrong, because in the second half, I'll be talking about why it's important and how you should be good at it. There are so many different angles I want to talk about when I talk about sex. Um, and yeah, so a couple of things I want to quickly mention is, if you're not honest, so I think a lot of what I talk about begins with God, strangely, and people might not connect it. People often think of sex, being good at sex, or your relationships with other people as something like separate from everything else, and that would be a mistake. Like, for example, sex is about being kind. So you can't be kind only in bed and not the rest of your life. You are a person, and wherever you go, you are that person. It doesn't suddenly change in different circumstances. So, but where does it all begin with? What's the root of the kind of our I would say slightly one-sided obsession with sex at the cost of many other things like family relationships and deep relationships, is our God awareness. So what's God got to do with anything? So when you forget kind of the wider purpose of life, or your wider experience of life, I like to say, besides outside sex, family relationships, community relationships, and things like that, what you do, you get sucked into a very narrow experience of life. And also part of that narrow experience of life, which, so when you're not doing charity work and so many other beautiful things that make your life whole, you start becoming materialistically orientated, and part of that is what you could be described as covetousness, or a hoarder or collector of things, and even people become things to be collected. So you might have heard of a trophy wife, etc. So people in the materialistic world become things, and they don't get treated very well if you're treated like a thing, because a thing can always be replaced, tossed away, and that's what happens in relationships, and lots of other bad things happen. So I'm going to try, that's one idea. I want to mention a few other quick ideas. So at the same time, on the other side, I want to say sex is a natural thing, and it should be experienced in a healthy way. And if you experience it in a healthy way, you really experience it properly. And I would say very few people that I know seem to be experiencing sex anywhere near where they should be. And you say, how do I know? Well, first of all, I have private conversations with people, and but also it's really, if you start seeing through the lens I'm about to give you, as it were, you'll see it's really obvious that people are suffering in bed, as it were, in their relationships in bed. And that would be a very quick hint at how we're suffering, is our inability to have like genuine conversations, feeling type conversations, expressing who we are, what we feel, and things like that. So when I was in the Middle East, part of a natural part of the conversation is I love you, right? That's how people express each other, you know, kissing each other on the cheek and stuff like that, men kissing each other on the cheek. It's very kind of, there isn't so much distance between people. And if you don't have that, if you don't have connection, you're not going to have connection in the bed. It doesn't suddenly change. So sex, really good thing, really healthy, must do it. But religion is beautiful in that it guides it. So if you do it within the proper limits, it's healthy. If you do it outside those limits, for example, if you just do it for the sake of pleasure, for example, you know, some people fight, well, I'll probably go into it later on. Ricky Gervais is saying, you know, you get pleasure up your ass, therefore, why shouldn't sex be through anal sex, for example? And then my answer roughly would be, you know, you can get pleasure from itching your ears. You know, sometimes people put earbuds in there and they go, oh, it really feels comfortable. It doesn't mean you put your genitals in your ears. It doesn't make sense. So there's always kind of a limit to how things are done. Sex. So I know I'm going on a bit. I'm going to give Salim a chance in a second, but just want to kind of roughly get through some of the basic ideas. Sex obsession is partly due to the need to feel successful. People feel really empty, and so they want to, let's say, win people's love. And the only very limited way they can do that is they'll have sex with somebody, and that person will say, by kind of having an experience with them, they're indirectly saying that they love them and how they think that that person is really good in bed or whatever it is. And that kind of thing, that I had sex with X person who has blonde hair or red hair or black hair or black face or whatever it is, I kind of dominated that person. I've won that person, and that tick that box, and I have sex with another person. Is that need, part of that need for obtaining people and feeling successful? And that, you will never feel successful in that way, because that's not uh, that's part of materialism, and I'll talk about that in detail if you want, where you're always chasing, because whatever you get, it's, you get used to it and you're on to the next thing. And kind of the last thing I want to quickly go into is that narrowness of the human experience. So if you narrow your experience to your genitals or a few parts of your organs, you're not going to feel complete. And also, it's a really dark path to go down to, and you can see that in when you go to people who get into light porn, for example. Then because it's not satisfying after watching it a while, they need to go to more and more hardcore porn until it goes to things like pedophilia and things like that. And where you go to what I would call not just dark, but misappropriated feelings is a way. Like you're feeling, you want to get feelings, but you're not getting them, you're not getting connection with people, and you go down dark paths because you're narrowing your human experience. And the human experience is beautiful if you go out and do things like be kind to people and stuff like that. So a lot of talking done there. So I was going to give it to Salim, but I think maybe he's tending to his sheep. Something's happening. He's coming back. He's on his way. I was going to say, oh, over to you, Salim. And it's like I looked up and he disappeared. What happened? Is what's happening?
So what happened was that the children were taking over the internet bandwidth via gaming and YouTubing and watching movies and listening to music all at the same time while we're trying to do a live YouTube stream. So I had to get my priorities right.
Oh, were you the kids? You were on the game. Oh, I get it. Now I get it.
No.
Sorry,
so yeah, very interesting topic. I think that, you know, this is like clickbait. Why are we obsessed with sex for Muslims? I mean, it's like almost a taboo subject nowadays, although it didn't used to be for hundreds and hundreds of years. So why are we obsessed with sex? And I reckon it's because our magazines, our movies, sex sells. You know, if you see me, you know, just in not wearing very much on the front cover of a magazine, you know, you're going to want to buy that magazine, right? If you see me in a movie, or if you see somebody half clad, they're gonna. Sex sells, basically. It's an innate human part of, you know, it's a part of our. It's in us to reproduce. It's human life.
Mm.
But
So it's
just
a
going to
fact.
back up.
Yeah. Go on. Go on. Go on. Go on. 'Cause I'm
So I'm
gonna
just
try
going
to
to
know
back
what.
up a little bit.
Yeah. Go on. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to back up a bit because sex. There's a number of areas to sex, like intimacy. We all want intimacy. We all want emotional connection. We all want closeness. We want to be caring, or we want to be loved. We want to share. We have this vulnerability. So that's all part of the intimacy side of sex. So that's number one. Number two is the sensuality side of things. So that is skin hunger. That is fantasies. That's enjoyment of one's body, enjoyment of other people's bodies, awareness. You get a sense of comfort. So that's sensuality. And then another key piece of the puzzle is your sexual identity. So that's your sexual orientation, your sense of maleness, your gender identity, basically. And then finally, we've got the reproduction side, which is what you call sex. That last bit at the end, the sex, is a small piece of the puzzle, but important part of the puzzle. That's the physiology, that's the intercourse. But all those previous things what I mentioned, they're critical as well. So we mustn't forget that's part of the puzzle. Why are we obsessed with sex? Because mostly, you know, there's pleasure in it. There's pleasure at that moment.
Okay, so yeah, there's some interesting points you gave just there, and I want to go through three of them. So there's intimacy, which is seriously lacking in modern Western or materialistic societies. So people feel really disconnected, and so you'll find that a lot of people have sex without the intimacy because it's kind of they're trying to get a shortcut to that intimacy. And so the more and this is also linked to so many elements of what's happening in society. So I would say society becomes more sex the more lonely people are, because, and I would not just what I would say it because I've been researching this. Sex becomes more part of your relationship the more disconnected and unhappy you are in your relationship. It shouldn't be such a big part. It's not a bad part, and in fact, even if it's a big part, it's probably a rubbishly experienced part, is what I'm saying. So if you're in a bad relationship, it's going to be a greater part of your relationship because there's less of your relationship to be seen. And then on top of that, you're really bad at sex because you don't know how to connect. And this is a wider problem in society. So people are paying for sex more, and it's even the kind of relationships people are in on Tinder and things like that. It's more about sexualizing yourself. So it becomes almost the only part of many relationships, and they have sex, people get bored, and then they go to the next relationship. So intimacy is really important, and it's lacking, and that's why sex is becoming so important to relationships. And it also means because there's lack of intimacy, people are having really bad sex. So I don't want to just talk about how things are bad. I want to very quickly talk about how they can be improved. So if you really want to improve your sex and your ability in sex, just need to be kinder and more understanding and more expressive generally in your life. Another thing is sex sells, is what Salim said. And it's what if you see something portrayed on TV lots of times, you start believing that's exactly the only thing that's important, and you start believing everybody else believes that because nobody else says anything otherwise. And finally, and it's also to do with your environment. If you see really wholesome family environments where people are wearing more clothes, you kind of start valuing that. But if you only see naked people all the time, you will value that and you think that is important. We are very much affected by our environment. And finally, people are just not getting enough sex, because Tinder doesn't mean you're getting more sex. It actually means, through the statistics, it means that most, like the 0.1% are getting all the sex, and most people are not getting sex. And that's statistically true. So there's always so many things, and we've already run out of time on that topic. Do join in the conversation. We could always backtrack or something like that. But the next